for the first portion of this webinar, we're going to be talking about going from solo entrepreneur or solopreneur to scalable. And Anna with us today is very knowledgeable on that topic, given she runs an agency for hiring and recruiting, and that is called Outsource Your Tasks, if you did not know, if you were stumbling into this call. On the flip side, I myself am familiar with hiring, running my own investing business. On Thursday, we're going to be bringing in Rylan Loader, who has a team of 14 people. And Anna, I'm pretty sure I'm right, but both Rylan and I have almost exclusively used your services. So yep. Yeah, it's been absolutely fantastic. I'm excited to get into this talk today and just show everybody here really what is the benefit of hiring, where are the highest levers, and what does it look like in the land investing world today? I mean, the here and now, because things have changed over the past couple of years. I think, I might have said, hey, go hire a $1, $2 VA yeah, a couple of years back, or try and find someone who's willing to do that part-time. That's just not the case anymore. So I'm super excited to get into this. Anna, is there anything you want to add before we get started?
No, not really. Let's just dive in and see how the flow goes.
Awesome. There is an open chat. If anybody has questions, I would just encourage you, instead of coming off mute, just ask your questions in there. If the question is too complex, maybe we can just have a conversation about that. We'll have a dialogue and roll with it. I think it'll be a good time. And with that being said, let's go ahead and move to our first slide here. Anna, do you want to take us from here?
Sure, absolutely. I see it's 40 of you that have joined the call, and I'm pretty sure that some of you are in maybe beginning stages of land investing. Some of you sort of kind of in the middle, and others are more advanced. I'm going to try to kind of touch the points or pain points for each of the sort of stages of land investing. But generally speaking, this is how we see the approach in sourcing in terms of, you trying to run the profitable land investing business. So typically we would start with placing an Excel or data specialist. Those folks are going to help you with, scrubbing, cleaning the data, doing all your kind of marketing related items related to all the data pool. And I know that a lot of you guys as land investors pull quite a lot of data, and we're going to dive into that in our second webinar with Land Insights as a whole. But we find that if you are a beginner land investor, this is probably the better way to start, by hiring this Excel specialist as your first hire. Only because if you've never managed people before, or if you are just getting your several deals kind of trickling in, you are probably the best closer for your business right now. So I would encourage to kind of start with this in mind. I mean, granted, if you already have been in business, you hired quite a lot of VAs, and your biggest bottleneck is actually lead management or conversion, then you can probably reshift who you're going to hire first. Your next hire.
Can I add something on that, Anna?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's kind of relevant too to just consider there are, because of the different channels that you're using, you were just about to talk about texting and cold calling, but because of the different channels, it does make sense. I mean, at times, because of how AI has shifted, and especially with Land Insights, how you can like scrub with AI scrubbing for landlocked, wetlands, flood zone. Now more than ever, I think this is one of the it's one of the most low pressure hires, right? Because we don't need people to be manually scrubbing like they were probably in the year past. Now with AI scrubbing, this data person is a low stress hire, regardless of what responsibilities you give them. Using a platform like Land Insights, even if you don't have Land Insights, it's going to be pretty easy to say X, Y, and Z needs to get done without giving them a full-blown game plan. And it's not going to hurt you. It's actually just probably going to take stress off of you, right? So yeah, I just want to add that in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you pointed it out, some people may use different marketing strategies, right? So their marketing strategy is data driven, right? They pull the list, so that's the first hire. But if they are not using that and they prefer to generate the leads or cold calling or texting, then probably the second role would be there first. Or you can skip the second role altogether if all you do is just pulling data, right? Because technically then you're not using launch control. Maybe you're not, cold calling on these people. You are getting warm leads through
Mail. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, we'll pull data for all of them. I think we'll talk about it a little bit more in depth here in a second, but I think you're right. Like there's absolutely a need to evaluate what situation are you actually in, because the answer, you may just be on a different portion of this, timeline here. So that's important to recognize.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we kind of move on into sort of like, what is your progression of your business, right? So first you generate these leads, but how do you generate the leads? Like that's the data, that's your marketing channels. And then who's actually watching over your leads, right? So before we even get to conversion, who is actually on top of lead follow-up? Because we all know we have to have 13 touches with a lead in order to convert it, right? So the lead manager probably will go next. A lot of the times people go in right away, acquisitions manager. And I normally say you are still the best closer. If you only had 5 deals closed, or maybe you had 20, or maybe you had 100, you probably learn this from the very beginning. You're probably still the best closer. And then hiring a lead manager for all of your sort of like old leads, right? A lot of lead investors come to us and they have about 200-300 warm leads in their pipeline. But those are the leads that need to be followed up on all the time. And typically you go after the most hot lead that's very active in the moment, right? But you're probably missing out on the ROI of these like 300 leads. Even if you only close maybe 5% of these leads, that's enormous amount of value that you're missing out.
Yeah.
So I would transition to lead management first and then acquisitions manager. And obviously transaction coordination implies that your lead flow in terms of closing rates is so high that now you're spending so much time on dealing with transaction coordination that you need to hire a person to deal with that, right? So that's why it kind of lasts in the process, even though it may look like it's an admin role, you kind of typically would bring up, but it's driven based on your volume of closings. So that's why we put it towards the end.
Yeah, and I would say, again, it takes some reflection here too, because you may be further in this business than the next person or the person sitting next to you, and because of that, you might be able to say, or the position you're in, you might be able to say, I don't have time to close. Well, you can't be the best closer in your business if you don't have time to close in the first place. And so having that, that realistic expectation for your business and understanding what does it look like for you is also very important. I think I don't think there's ever a situation where transaction coordinator would come first, or honestly 1 through 3 here. I think that's the cherry on top. And so if you can't manage the kind of the process up until that point, we probably shouldn't be considering a transaction coordinator yet.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide here.
Yeah, so we typically have this question all the time. It doesn't really matter whether it's you're a land investor or any type of business owner. Like, what do I outsource first? And you guys can read through this and really understand what is your $10 an hour task versus $200 an hour task. And some people can say, well, hold on a second. It could be a $5 an hour task, or it could be $150. I purposefully create disorientation for your brain to just say, I either have to put it in this bucket or the other one. There's no in the middle, right? It will help you quickly reallocate all these transactions, right? And we just talked about transaction coordination. So think about this. Getting your transaction to the finish line would actually be in the $200 an hour bucket in the beginning, right? Because that's your bloodline. If you're not going to close this, if you're not going to make seller and buyer happy, then that's it. Like the bloodline of the business just leaves. That's your sales dollars that you're talking about. So if you can see that closing a seller is always in the beginning in that $200 an hour task, right? Eventually, once you have like massive amount of profitability, then you hire the acquisition manager, and they're going to help you out with kind of scaling. But in the very beginning, it's exactly what we've been talking about: data scrubbing, mail prep, texting, lead gen. So coordinating the transactions, I kind of keep it there only because how much it costs. But in reality, you can almost move it in the $200 an hour bucket in the beginning, only because the imputed value of getting the deal to the finish line, right? But always have that mental exercise. Maybe you guys own other businesses, right? And I always encourage you to journal what you do, and then try to allocate this in 2 buckets, because this is not everything, right? You obviously have other activities that you do. And besides 10 versus 200, also think about it. What is my draining task and what is my fulfilling task? Because I'll give you a funny example. I personally like shoveling snow. Like, this is very silly, but I like it. So it's rare when we have snow, but I would rather do it myself. I would never outsource this. Or I love working on my taxes. Like, I'm a tax strategist, even though I don't have, any formal tax, education. I love it. Most people hate it, right? So there are some items on your list that you actually love doing. Maybe don't outsource it just yet. And if sales is that your thing, then yes, like it has to be in that $200 an hour bucket. Some people say, you know what, I'm not a great salesperson. Let me just put it right away in the $10 an hour bucket. I would encourage not to. Sales is your bloodline. You're the only one, you're the business owner, you're going to close your customer. This is the last task to outsource.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. I think there's situations where sales is going to be something you do want to hire for, and it's going to be, just like you said, an evaluation of where you're at, what you already have on your plate. We see a lot of people who have Land Insights love it because they have other jobs, they have families, they have businesses, right? And that's the leverage that a platform like Land Insights or even hiring gives you. It gives you that opportunity to evaluate what you can delegate or take off your plate without slowing down. So yeah, I absolutely love that exercise as well. I definitely think there's a lot of $200 tasks in this business, but I think the trap is a lot looks like a $200 task when it's actually a $10 task.
Yes.
And it's very easy to trap yourself in the ideology that you can't get rid of it, because if it breaks, then you're done for. When in reality, it's not that important. Or maybe it's not that vital. So yeah, one thing I would encourage everyone to do is that exercise. Where am I? What are my priorities? And is it a $200 task, regardless of whether or not I can do it? So if I know I don't have time to close, is it still a $200 task, or is it $10? Is it actually a $10 task? And I think sometimes your ability to prioritize your tasks will sometimes trick you into thinking it's $10, but it may not be. So
absolutely. And what you said about sales, I didn't mean to say sales, because sales is a massive cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
It starts with the lead comes in and it ends the lead closed. But in between, there's just so much, and even generating that lead is also sales, right? So what I would put in the $200 an hour bucket is that conversion.
Yeah,
a little bit of that report building that kind of lays within the lead management, not necessarily generation. And the lead generation, if it is a cold call, or right away, you don't have time for that. A lot of people that have jobs really don't have time for that. It definitely goes to the $10 an hour task.
Yeah, and I think that there's more. There's, on top of hiring, there's just being resourceful in this business is extremely important, right? You want your employees, I think one thing nowadays, you want your employees to be able to use AI too. And so just being able to leverage AI, whether it's you or your employees, keeping that in mind as you hire people, because there are certain roles that can leverage AI a little bit more efficiently. A data role or an analytical role, admin role, those roles can probably use AI much easier than sales. And even if in the sales role, maybe a sales AI trainer or some sort of call analyzer, things like that. Just understanding how we can plug that in, because hiring only gets enhanced once you have that leverage. I just think that's a cool note to point out, especially how fast AI is moving today.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the benefits here. I mean, this feels straightforward. I feel like everyone's like, well, of course, the benefits are I can delegate. And yes, I think that is the crux of it. But I think that we trap ourselves into thinking there are certain things we want to delegate and other things we just know we don't, when I think that's going to be a constant conversation with yourself, a realization of what truly should, not can, but should I delegate. Business owners often don't have enough time to follow up with leads. Even if you're a solopreneur, I found this to be the case when I had a W-2. I also find this to be the case when you just feel like you have a good run with all of your leads. You have a good source of leads, and it just keeps coming in, and you feel like, hey, I've always got something to look at. You tend to forget or put off all of those prior leads that just didn't feel like they would shake out. Outsourcing that is crucial. And so once you're at the point where the follow-up's happening without you, you can be a lot more confident that the touches you talked about earlier, Anna, those 13 touches it takes to get someone, that's ultimately going to happen. It's not going to be chance. It's going to be repetition. And so, yeah, I definitely feel like that's something you can't do when you're not outsourcing. Another thing is that there are different aspects of the land business which truly do take importance over others. A good example of this would be negotiation versus cleaning up your CRM. So I don't think that you as the business owner should be in your CRM, cleaning it up, making it pretty, maybe building automations. It's tempting, especially as you want to create the structure of your business, but that's something you should outsource. You should absolutely be on the phone negotiating if it's between those two tasks. Another thing is, if you are not outsourcing, you're spending more time on a majority of the work or the entire flow, which ultimately will cause your lead flow to slow down if you're not spending all of your time getting your deliverables completed. And because of that slower lead flow, you will just result in making less offers. If you're making less offers, you're just inevitably going to do less deals. So that's something really important. If you're not outsourcing, you're going to be finding yourself in this business that ends up slowing down over time, and it feels like it comes to a screaming halt. And that's just the opposite of what you want to feel. And I've even been in that situation with my own land business myself. So this business does go through ebbs and flows for sure. There's a lot that we can control that I don't think everyone always realizes. We feel like we've got to do everything ourselves, and the entire timeline of our business from start to finish for a lot of people has been being solo. And so I think that this is why this is so important, is to break out of that cycle of, man, I just don't know if this business is for me, or maybe the business is, I'm just starting out and I don't know how to get my handle on it. The solution could be hiring, right? The owner-operator mindset keeps you stuck in the weeds as well, and it makes you really feel like you have to be stuck in the weeds because you're building it from the ground up. But I think that once you understand outsourcing is a lot of leverage, that will allow you to start focusing on the scale of your business. And scaling doesn't always mean going from zero to Rylan. If anyone here knows Rylan Loader, he's texting hundreds of thousands of people per month. Patrick, we'll get that settled for you. Yeah, that's been giving us quite a bit of issues. So sorry about that. Webinar Jam is troubling, to say the least. But if anyone knows Rylan Loader, the man is sending out hundreds of thousands of texts per month. And because of that, we're seeing that, we're ultimately finding that scale is relative, right? He feels that scale is, once your brain breaks, that's when you should be hiring someone. And I absolutely love that about Rylan. But when I'm starting out, I can't be scaling that big. I can't be scaling to hundreds of thousands of folks. And for me, scale might look differently if I'm just starting out. And so keep that in mind. If you're not hiring, that could ultimately hurt you a lot more because you're stuck in this mindset of you must do it yourself. And a lot of gurus out there might teach you that, but that doesn't mean that you should. So what does it look like when you hire, when you actually outsource? Well, it truly changes everything. It changes the mindset you're in. You can actually start focusing on revenue generating activities, which we'll talk about in a second. But it honestly clears the noise. If you're able to give someone a task and trust that they will do it, not just give them the task and kind of breathe over their shoulder, trying to micromanage while they get it done, but truly give them an SOP, a standard operating procedure, and allow them to run with the task, improve over time, take feedback, grow with the feedback, and master that task, you are always going to be in a better headspace once you can trust that your employee is going to do their job. So I highly recommend you take that into consideration when you're telling yourself, I don't need to hire. Now, low-cost overseas talent is a popular reason and a popular benefit of outsourcing. But I think that the trap here is a lot of people will look at it regardless of the dollar amount per hour that it costs, and they'll call it an expense. This is not an expense, right? It's an investment. And I think that when you look at your employees through the lens of being an expense, you tend to find it burdensome to actually manage them or to give them instruction. And as an expense, you're trying to constantly cover your butt here and make sure they haven't screwed up. When I think empowering an employee, calling them an investment, calling them the owner of their role, right? And giving them that opportunity to actually fail and grow from it is a huge opportunity to create a lasting employee. I think that is one thing that a lot of people tend to find is there's high turnover. And a question that I would ask is, how much did you trust that person and how much did you let them fail? If you are constantly on the phone with them, giving them instruction every single day, it's going to cause them to work within the bounds you've given them. And often they're not going to become innovative in their own role. And I think there's probably a mentality that we have as owners to say, well, this person they don't think outside the box, or they really are confined to what they want to accomplish. But it's like, we give them the bounds. We control what they're comfortable doing. And if we tell them, run for the hills, like just go for it, figure it out. And if you fall short or if we fail, we learn, then they're going to be willing to go above and beyond for us. So I really would take all of that into consideration. All of this frees you to focus up on the very big money-making revenue drivers in your business when you start making those first initial hires as well. Negotiating is incredibly huge. And I talked about conversion. You can't be outsourcing that immediately in all instances, especially if you're just starting out. But there are going to be a couple of things I want to talk about when it comes to how would I outsource acquisitions, for example. That being the case, you can outsource focus on other aspects of this business that are really high leverage, like dispo or scaling strategy. Like, what am I actually doing next in order to scale? And if you know anything about me or what I've talked about in the past, I tend to have a little bit of a different opinion on scaling, but I like to call it comfortable scaling. You scale when the business demands you to scale. And you'll learn that over time as you push, as you hire, and you hit boundaries. You're doing this as your business demands. I love Ryland's view as well, which is you basically push yourself to scale until your business breaks, until a process breaks and you're forced to hire. So he'll talk a lot more in depth about his hiring strategy, his A to Z, and how he creates strategies for his employees.
And I wanted to add to your ROI.
Yeah.
The example that I like to use that resonates with a lot of lend investors, and let's use it for, let's say, acquisitions management, right?
Sure.
This is when we're talking about you already have a good lead flow, and what does that mean in terms of the ROI? So I don't know if you guys heard of Base Morby, Sub2 community, but he talked about this on one of the podcasts where he said, I know I'm the best closer there is, right? His closing rate probably was through the roof. Let's say industry standard is 30%, his was 50%. And he said, at some point I realized nobody's going to be as good as me in what I do, but it's going to be a trap for me to just get stuck in here and I'll never scale.
Yeah.
So he said, even if I hired a person who is 10% closing rate, it's kind of, 5 times less than his close rate. He's like, that would allow me to still incrementally grow, right?
Yeah.
An example I use with land investing specifically is, let's say you have 100 leads in your pipeline right now that need to be followed up on. Let's say your close rate is, because I know land investing is a little bit smaller than traditional housing. Let's just say your close rate is 15%, 10%, and you bring in somebody who's at 5%, right? And average profitability of the deal, let's downplay it and say $20,000. So you just closed 5 deals, $20,000. That's $100,000 that you didn't have. And a lot of times we have people asking like, well, can we hire an acquisition manager at like $10 an hour? And the rates did go up, right? We're kind of looking at the market rates, and rates did go up. Even if you hire somebody at $15 an hour, that's $30,000 a year. And even if you give them 5% of your profitability, which nobody does, typically people kind of cap them out at 3%, but I encourage you to give them more. From that $100,000, you paid out 35. Mm-hmm. That's a 65 you never had before to begin with, right? Why not be generous? Like, hire 10 more of those, increase your marketing, and that's your phone.
Yeah, and on top of that, I mean, the growth for that person, right? The ability to continue scaling with that person, or for that person to even create your structure after a while. I love the idea of giving the responsibility of building further SOPs or training to the employee who's killing it. That just takes it off your plate and gives you the opportunity to hire someone else. And I'm with Patrick in the chat, he said you can't outclose 5 a.m.s. Yeah, I can't. I know I can't. And I would call myself the best closer that I've ever had the pleasure of hiring. So yeah, I just don't think it would be possible. There's a certain threshold where it doesn't matter how good you are, your business will not do better if you remain in that closing role. So I absolutely agree with that. Awesome. So let's just really quickly talk about these 3 strategies. So strategic hiring for direct mail will look different than for texting and cold calling. Thank you, Kathy. Now, that being the case, for direct mail, I just want to say one of the highest levers you can pull is hiring an acquisitions manager, someone who can just quickly get on that call. I think speed to lead is a phrase we've all heard. An acquisitions manager is on the same vein, is extremely high leverage. It doesn't mean they need to be the only person on the phone. And matter of fact, usually when you hire an acquisitions manager, it's to fill in the gaps that you can't fill. Especially if you don't have as many leads to give that acquisitions manager. They could be part-time. They truly could. And you can cover things when they're not working as well. So it's not necessarily a full replacement, but starting out here with an employee that you can kind of build that relationship with and ultimately move towards potentially a full-time role is extremely high leverage. This is someone who can quickly answer and respond to your inbound leads. You can also build strict follow-up cadences with these folks, which, let's just face it, if you're focusing on all of this other stuff in the business, you're not doing that. Most of the time, you're not doing that. And you might take a look at the lead 2 months from now and say, yeah, it could have worked. But had you just called and followed up and had another conversation, it's possible that person's situation changed. It's possible the deal could have completely changed course. You could have gotten under contract for however much less, or for whatever price you offered previously, whatever it might be. But the leverage is in touches, in getting to these people multiple times. And I think that this needs to be something that you do quicker rather than slower when it comes to direct mail specifically, if you're only doing direct mail. And we'll talk about an acquisitions manager a little bit more when we talk about texting here. But this person can also help with your data, with your mailing prep and your listing prep. So if for whatever reason you don't work with, or you don't decide to hire a VA or that specific data analyst role, this is another opportunity. If you already have an acquisitions manager, plug them into your process so they're very well versed in what it takes for a lead to even get to them. Data, mail prep, sending that out, especially if marketing through mail is your only channel. Your acquisitions manager can be so plugged into where they're bought into this success because they understand the business. We don't want them to be fully siloed off where they don't understand where their leads even come from. So, and that's an exaggeration, but truly, we do want them to be bought into how do we get the highest quality leads as possible, because they're the ones that get paid when they close, right? For texting, it's a little different. So if you are texting people, you should not be the owner manually texting people. I've talked to investors who have done this, and it is an absolute time suck. You just can't do it. A texting manager is, I think it's a prereq to texting. Like it's got to happen at the same time, whether it's a launch control account or another software. You're hopping into it with a texting manager already on your team or in the hiring process, because if you start sending out those texts yourself, not only is it a cumbersome process to continue sending them, but the follow-up or the response is ridiculously time-consuming. So keep that in mind. This should be the first hire if you're getting into texting and you're moving into that realm. This person, though, can also do other things, just like the acquisitions manager we were talking about for mail. This person should not be siloed only to texting. You lose a lot of your leverage if you put them only on those texts, and then there's hot spots throughout the day where nobody's responding or they have no follow-up. So, Patrick, if you are manually doing that, I would give you a cookie, because I don't think that you would be sane right now. But with a texting manager, not only would you be sane, you'd also be able to hit daily quotas, which I think pulls away from the weekly or the monthly quotas that we often miss, right? We tell ourselves, I want to do 5,000 texts, or let's actually use a monthly goal. I want to do 10,000 texts a month. rather than I want to do 330 texts per day. It is much more manageable to go and get 330 records than to say, I want to get 5,000 records and then start or get that ready for the month. And so by creating manageable deliverables that your texting manager can manage themselves, they know where the data is coming from. They're actually bought in to doing it right and doing it very well. High quality work for high quality data, for high quality leads that come in, especially, and this isn't required, but especially if you give your texting manager some sort of commission, whether it's 1% or something like that, it's very valuable, or even a kicker if they get a hot lead that ends up closing. So they need to be focused on a daily outbound text campaign objective, and that should not fall to you. As well, they need to be focused on responding to the leads in your marketing software, and you should not be poking your head in there unless it's for an audit, right? And like checking work, training, making sure it's good. But once again, we go through that process of getting to the place where we trust this employee, that employee's taking the reins. That's their domain. And this person's qualifying those texts and pushing them to your CRM. And that's for you or your AM to actually close. And this role is unique in that we can give our texting managers different objectives or different directions, instructions, SOPs on how to complete what they're doing. But truly we found, and Rylan will speak in depth on this to help you just become overall convinced that making sure you are marketing fully neutral without pricing your marketing out beforehand for texting specifically is one of the highest levers you can pull on, especially if you have land insights and you can use the comping tool. There's no reason why you should be trying to price up front. It's going to slow you down. You're not going to get your data out or your marketing out. And with AI scrubbing, you can get your marketing out in minutes. I mean, truly minutes. And even if you don't hit your daily quota and you start sending out a campaign and a platform like Launch Control, you are able to send that out, and your texting manager can go back to the drawing board to get more data. So making it a daily objective is much more feasible and digestible for your team. And it'll ensure you don't fall short, especially not fall short when there's a large objective at hand. So I highly recommend considering all that. Now for cold calling, it's a little different. At the end of the day, you can still do all of this. The coolest thing ever is you can pull data and skip trace it all in Land Insights. So if you are using Land Insights, I think this is probably the easiest it's ever been in this industry. But the idea is you're having a cold caller cold call all of the leads in your CRM, whether or not they are follow-ups, whether or not they're just new data points that you're entering in as leads or as prospects, and you're just having them go through all of those. And I think this is extremely effective because a lot of people will ultimately use a cold caller for new lists only. This is where you should really try and leverage their time strategically for not only follow-up with campaigns you've already done, not only with new campaigns, but also with leads that have come into your CRM that you haven't been able to move, right? Almost as a lead manager for your existing leads. And from here, it's just about building rapport. Have this person start that conversation and kind of tie the bow nice and neat for you to come in, and once they're pre-qualified, close that deal, whether it's you or your AM. And the whole point of this is giving these cold callers reign over the data they're calling. So if you have a cold caller, they should be familiar with how to get that data in and out of your CRM. They should also understand how to leverage your calling software. If you have a dialer like Mojo Dialer or Ready Mode or whatever it might be, they should be well versed in understanding that software and how to use it and set it up. You shouldn't be the one driving everything there, after you train them, of course. Or hopefully they just have experience. So yeah, do you have anything to add there, Anna?
Just random quick tips. We stopped using cold callers, but I'm personally being bombarded by cold callers all the time.
Yeah.
Because I'm a business owner, so people pitch me VA services too, right? So I don't know if you guys know, because I kind of am not familiar with dialers anymore. In the past we used something, but I actually know when it's a cold call because there's a little bit delay and a sound switch when people call me. So I know right away that I can hang up. Because as a business owner, it's not me, but whoever picks up the phone, they know they have to pick up the phone with that click. So it's advice for you on the other end. If you are using cold calling systems, are you one of those users of these systems? And maybe a lot of your calls are being dropped before they can even get to the conversation. This is just anecdotal evidence.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's helpful at all. It's not part of this sort of discussion, but since we're talking about cold calling. And the other part about cold calling is you mentioned about they have to be strategic to kind of think about who to call. One of the piece of advice that we had, if you ever kind of have the lead that just was engaged with you and then they kind of just, disappeared and never want to follow up, whatnot, just find another phone. It could be a Google Voice or anything else that your cold caller can call them from, and have them pretend that this is a brand new cold call. Like, don't tell them that, hey, Ari was in touch with you in the past or whatever. Just pretend that it's a brand new phone call. And we've actually closed quite a few deals this way by pretending we already knew that there was an interest. The seller was interested. Maybe the circumstances just didn't align. But if you start fresh, sometimes it just kind of resets everything. And there's potential for closing.
There's often bias there, especially if an owner's already spoken to you. There was a deal in Ohio that I was trying to get done, and I had spoken to the owner for some time, built rapport, and after they wanted more money, they didn't feel comfortable asking me for it because they knew me so well. So it was like, I would have thought that because they knew me so well, they would actually wanted to give me that number and work with me. Instead, when I started calling them over and over, not incessantly, but trying to follow up, they wouldn't answer until I found out they were working with another investor, because it was just easier to not go into all of that. So if I would definitely recommend doing that. I would also definitely recommend, especially with cold call, I love the idea of someone building rapport and then passing that off to you for you to kind of come in and close. I love that dynamic personally. Awesome. So the last thing I want to talk about here are what we call the 4 pillars of land insights. And maybe it should be the 4 pillars of land investing in general, because it really comes down to 4 separate aspects of this business. One is market research, right? The reason why I want to talk about these is because when you hire, you really want your team to be cognizant of their aspect of the platform or of this business. This platform, we do our best to make sure it does reflect the different aspects of the business as well. And as you hire folks, they inevitably will be using different portions of the platform. So the 4 pillars that you see here are incredibly important to touch on, because if you want to save time or if you want to make more money, either is possible when you're delegating and using a platform that is meant to only save you more time. Market research allows you to, instead of seeing one county at a time, see hundreds, if not thousands. I wouldn't suggest you go through and compare thousands at one time, but we have a framework to help you understand exactly how to search for those good markets. And it's so, there are going to be people in this business, as myself included, who kind of get a little bit anal around what markets you choose and it being your decision, right, as the business owner. But it is so simple through our platform that you can delegate this out. So for someone like a texting manager or an acquisitions manager, you can put that power in their hands. Now, I wouldn't suggest it full time, but this is something that you can give them access to, that they would help start to understand how to use the platform. An acquisitions manager specifically might even find the data platform or the comping tool beneficial to understand and have access to, because they can see the property details in real time. They can see due diligence. Is there wetlands? Is there flood zone? Is there a structure? Is there junk? Is there a lack of access? What comping tool information is there? It'll talk to you about the parcel information in the comping tool, the market in the comping tool. There's just so much detail here that you can empower your team with that. One, if you're a Land Insights user and you're not doing that, I highly recommend you plug your team into the platform and ask them, what do you think would help you in your role that's in here? And then have them go through the course or give them a quick brief overview, but have them ask them that question. I would prompt you to ask them, what do you feel here would actually help you in your current role? What can you leverage here? Because the tools here next level. All of them are next level, especially when you consider them all together. So we have market research being that initial portion of the platform and of your business. Starts there. It moves into pulling the data in our data platform and having for example, your texting manager aware of, okay, how do I actually pull the data? How do I scrub it? Where do I pull it? Where do I download it? How do I skip trace it? All of that is going to be extremely high leverage when you can take your hand off that process and let them run with it. For your acquisitions managers to hop right into the comping tool and use it on their daily calls, you're going to notice that they stop asking it for as many questions, or what do I do in this situation or that situation, when they have all the context they need looking at the property. And the easiness for them to click right into the comping tool when every export has the link directly to it for each property, right? As a lead comes in, boom, click it, open it up. I'm already talking to the seller. So it's amazing. And then from there, obviously, once you get that locked up, you're going in and using disposition tools, the realtor reports we have, the listing photo editor, and we've got more down the pipeline for those. These are what sets you apart. They're the cherry on top, but they're what sets you apart from other investors who can't find the right partners and don't have great listings, the ugly listings. So I would highly recommend, if you haven't booked a demo, you go book it just to kind of experience this. I think if you don't have land insights, you're almost doing yourself a disservice to not understand what is out there. And I think it's probably pretty relevant for a lot of folks who don't use land insights, is that everything is time consuming. This business feels much harder when you don't have land insights in your tool belt. So keep that in mind, everyone. We do have a question, Anna, in the chat. I don't know if you want, I can read it for you. It's from Thomas. Thomas is asking, does OYT find and recommend resources experienced at land-specific tasks? This seems critical for those like me, outsourcing because you have a full-time job while slowly scaling. Finding buckets of time to create training and do training can be a blocker. I'm particularly interested in acquisitions manager using the direct mail channel.
Yeah, very good question. I would say that we can always try to look for somebody with land investing experience. Great sellers with land investors stay. Mm-hmm. So particularly speaking with a specific topic, we would recommend open this up to any high ticket closer or anyone who was a closer for real estate and investment, any type of investment, not just land. Yeah. Simply because you're going to widen the net of people that are going to be applying. And no matter how much you want to not have training, you still have to have training. So yeah. I know that you guys have a lot of the recorded material that you can tap into. I know a lot of land investors are part of all these masterminds with a lot of sort of kind of shared SOPs and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So please do utilize that. But again, keep in mind that a great acquisition manager, their main skill set that comes with them is closing, right? They know how to talk to people. They know how to build rapport. They know how to get them to finish line. And that's already like 80% of what you need. Unfortunately, nobody's going to train them on your business the way you like your business to be handled besides you. And I've been in your position. I was a W-2 employee and I lived in a different country and I started my real estate business. The reason why I even designed this whole business around it is with investor in mind. I have a little bit of that in the future sort of slides, but one thing that I realized when I started hiring through agencies is when the agency promises you, we're going to manage your person. You don't have to do much. You're just going to, ride through this. It's not true. It's just simply not true. Reality is you will have to dedicate time and training. And there will be some points of, if that's your first ever hire, at first it's going to be extremely painful. It's okay. It's normal. There are just ways of sort of, it's a two-way street where you have to almost learn to be a leader and the manager of that person and guide them, right? So Ari already mentioned, you have to train them, but you also have to let them be independent. Mm-hmm. And then you also have to give them feedback, right? So it will take your time. So do understand that it will take some of your time, but trust me, that investment frees up a lot more of your time and gives you more money.
Yeah, and I would also say, over time, this has changed in terms of where you might want to hire from. So take that into consideration, Thomas. I have found that for whatever reason, I love Central America in terms of not only the time consistency, right? They're on the same time zone, but also There are a lot of familiarity in the States with the accents that you'll find in Central America. So that's been really fun. And yeah, everyone I've gotten has been through Outsource Your Tasks this far. So that's something important to remember. I'd also say that specifically for your situation, the training that you offer, I think it depends what truly you want to accomplish with that person. Are they going to be, if they're going to be full-time, do you have enough for them to be full-time? And if not, then it depends. It depends, because you need to train them on something, and it's not always going to be closing or calling all the time. Even for a normal acquisitions manager, they might make or be able to make 30 to 50, maybe a little bit more calls per day, but they don't have any leads to call. That's probably not going to happen. And so filling their time with stuff that kind of gets them bought in to the process of getting those leads could be beneficial, or even having them set for themselves, cold calling and closing. So think about that as well. I would say acquisitions manager is a very high leverage role for the situation you're in with a full-time job. And if they are not doing full-time, or if they're not able to fully work on your leads full-time, I think you really need to consider what type of training they get. Is it going to be literal like legitimate training, or are you just giving them SOPs and looms that you've pre-recorded and kind of gotten from other places? If you have Land Insights, we have SOPs, so that'll help. But overall, it's going to be relative to your situation. I think so Patrick and Kyle, or Khaled potentially, brought up the idea of cost. What does an AM actually cost? So Anna, you can speak to that a little bit more, but I will say, Patrick, I have liked the idea of low base, high commission. I find that the ownership of the role is very high when you know that they're bought in. And I guess it's also subjective what high commission is, but I've seen some folks pay as high as 10, which is insane. And that's for in the States, but I've seen some people go as high as 10%. And I think, for me, I like 5 to 7. And I think that it's pretty encouraging.
And actually, Ari, if you can go to the next slide, that's exactly what I would have covered right now too.
Let's talk about it.
Consider hiring remotely. I'll quickly go over the skills, right? Again, think about acquisition managers specifically right now. Is the real estate experience is very critical or not, right? Because I have some land investors saying it's a must. Others I actually don't want them to come with preconceived notion. I want fresh start. I want them just to be able to have high ticket close experience, right? And it's matching your personal style. We can work with every style. It doesn't really matter. Based on what we see, you can find good in both of the options. Accent comes out a lot, right? So this is what you have to consider. Most likely your inside sales / cold caller will have some accent. Your lead manager would be better. And then your acquisitions manager would be even better than that. Do we completely eliminate accent altogether and it's completely not noticeable? Not really, but trust me, I have accent. I used to actually convert deals myself, and it never sort of prevented me from closing. It's not as critical as people think. And, I've spoke with a lot of, let's just call it an avatar of a older white male who's not happy that he's being bothered. But trust me, a slight accent does not divert from ability of great sales skills, as long as they can actually demonstrate that they are great closers, right? So accent sometimes is overrated in a way that, can you confirm that you actually had closed deals in the past? And if that's the case, I would trip that over a slight accent. The other thing is when you think about skills, try not to combine non-complementary skills. So when you mentioned something about that, your acquisition manager, let's say they would be updating the CRM, perfectly normal. That's in line of their skills.
Yeah.
But if they're going to ask them, can you also work on my books, right? Something like mentally challenging or requires attention to details in terms of like data analytics, whatnot. try not to do that. That's going to kind of divert them from being excited about the role. We source everywhere in the world, Asia, Africa, Americas. And in terms of the cost, I would say in the past, if you ask me, $8 an hour with 2% bonus would be perfectly fine. More often than not, in Latin America specifically, or even Egypt, we find that great closers tend to charge definitely more than 10. The sweet spots, it's somewhere between 12 to 14. And then if you are ready at the $14 an hour, which we have quite a lot of investors that are ready at that rate, as long as the closer is great, we started converting into US, right? Because at $15 an hour, you're kind of like at about 30K base, let's say 5% commission. Again, with that example that I gave you, if you bring in $100,000 incremental and you pay just someone $35,000, so be it, right? In the end of the day, you just made an incremental 65. So the rates are definitely, I would say, higher than 10 would be better quality of candidates. And then obviously just do consider cost of living. Sometimes we're specifically being asked for South Africa. One thing to consider that there are different types of people in South Africa, and some people will have like a very strong Afrikaans accent that is kind of leaning towards more like African. If you have ever met people from Africa, maybe even like Nigeria or Zimbabwe, whatnot, there's like the strong accent that is leaning towards the African. And then some people in South Africa would speak something closer to British. Yeah. Right. So you have to be careful in who you essentially targeting. And those that are sales skills, real estate, and British are less likely to come by than the other way around. So that's why we started getting towards the US based sales folks, only because just more to choose from. And you can still find them. The $15 an hour is a very low base for US employee, but then again, you can add commission in there. Yeah, you add the commission. Commission sometimes is higher for US based employees, so kind of keep that in mind.
And I wanted to add something, Anna. You mentioned 100,000. You used that as an example, and of course, coming into this business, 100,000 is a lot of money. It really is. There's a lot of folks who have had other businesses, and you see that number, and you're not, you're amused, but you're not impressed. 100,000. We're talking about 5 deals that are doing $20,000. For most folks here who have some exposure to land investing, 5 deals throughout a year when you're not the one actually on the phone is rather feasible, right? You're outsourcing it, so you know that this person is working on the phone. And I mean, you see someone in the chat, I think it was Patrick, who was saying, that person was being paid $18 an hour. They only brought in 2 to 3 deals per month. Right. And that is questionable, Patrick. I agree. But also that's 2 to 3 deals per month. So depending on, how you train or what you hire for, if you're able to leverage that to get you more than 5 deals or 10 deals or whatever it might be, or just 1 deal that pays an abnormal 7 or 6 figure amount, right? Well, most of your others pay, high 5 figures. This is completely like, we're being very conservative here. Like in this particular business, and I in the next year, I might walk home with 500 to 700,000. And if I do that, then any hire that I've ever made has paid for itself in dividends. So, yeah.
And I would actually revert back to Patrick. Patrick, how much profitability did that person bring to you? Yeah. Let's say if you paid $18 an hour, let's just say that maybe over the course of 3 months, you paid them, let's say 10 grand. Let's just say 10 grand. And they only closed 3 deals, let's say. Let's even say that they're $50,000. If you find me any type of index fund or any investment where I can bring in $10,000 in the 3 months, somebody converts me that into 50, sign me up. You guys actually tell me where can I invest, and I'll hire those people for you, and I'll sign me up for the 5x return on my money. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'd be happy if I get in the market. If I get 10, 15, 20%, I'll be happy with it. There are
Yeah.
a lot of syndications where people are pitching you 10% return. Like they just convert the way you're thinking about it. This is not an expense. If you turn it into the ROI, even a very, very bad salesperson that that brings you 3 deals in a quarter, that's a hell of a rate of return.
Yeah. So let's hop through here. So we talked about
Yeah, you can
scaling.
probably skip on that one. It's very similar to the first slide.
Yeah, and just scaling over time, hiring as you go. Mhm.
Yep. I'll touch base on this real quick, and you guys can read through this, but I'll probably address a couple of key questions that we typically get. First, do I have to have some sort of like timing tracking mechanism, time doctor, whatever it is? For every time doctor, there's an anti-time doctor. Just want you all to know, all the VAs know about it. They can find a way to figure this out. The best way is to actually manage your employee properly. And this is done through KPIs, right? So define the goals clearly, keep them accountable. If you're going to define the goal this month and only ask about it 3 weeks later, you've already failed.
Mhm.
Definitely always, provide them feedback. If they did great, starting from you did an amazing job, ending with a bonus, that's it. And just-in-time feedback for poor performance. And don't sort of kind of like just tell them you performed poorly, dig in with questions. What went wrong? What could you do to be better? Have them respond to you, right? But just-in-time feedback is critical. You absolutely must be having these conversations all the time. Many of you are in corporate jobs. How much do you hate when you wait until annual performance and then you kind of like, surprise, your 2%, increase or maybe underperform or overperform, right? It's annoying and it's like not productive. So having the feedback, if not once a week, multiple times a week, is absolutely crucial for you to develop a true leader within the organization. And the last thing about the training, I know how annoying it is when people are not getting it and not getting it from maybe third time, fourth time, but the same way we talked about 13 touches with leads, in certain aspects of the role, some people will require 13 touches of your repetition of what they need to do. It's normal. If you convert it, again, change your perspective by saying it's annoying to saying, oh, I'm on my 5th one. I get, 6 more to go, 7 more to go, right? And then I'm hitting my 10th one. They're probably going to get closer. If you just convert that like method of way, the way that you think about this, I guarantee you're going to create an industry leader within the organization. Are you muted?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes the only time that tracking time has helped is when I'm actually available enough to micromanage, when that's not what you want to do. So,
yep.
I love that. Well, let's talk a little bit about OYT here, and then we'll wrap up on that note and kind of segue into what we'll be talking about next week.
Sure. What we do for you guys, we already work and support a lot of lend investors. So we're familiar with your business. We understand what you're going through. So we understand how to help you. I've created this business for myself in mind because I am a real estate investor too. So we have expanded. We started in the Philippines. We've expanded. Again, now we source everywhere throughout the world. You name the country, we can find you a person. What we provide for you is not inundating you with resumes, but we provide you with a package. The most important part, what we provide is we vet them out from 100 people to 3, and those top 3 will have video recorded interviews. So we try to offload as much of your time that you're going to be spending on sourcing yourself. Can you source yourself? You can. We actually have a training. If you're starting out, just go ahead and the training is only $299. Go for it. And you're going to learn a lot. You can do it yourself. But most of the time we actually hear from people that just simply don't have time for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll move to this next slide. But one thing I'll add to this is when you're hiring, Thomas had asked about it, like, oh, I don't want to have to train too much. But one thing I'll say is you may not want to hire someone if you don't have that prepped up, right? Because when they come in, think about this for yourself. How would you feel if you were hired into a business and you had nothing? Like you had no other than your role and what your purpose was. You didn't have any guideline on how you're you're going to be leveraged for what your tasks are for the business. So careful hiring when we're starting that process, when you don't actually have your build out of training material or onboarding, so to speak. And yeah, I think this slide speaks for itself. Why do investors trust OIT? And it's been proven through and through for everyone who's used it. So yeah, I have nothing to add to this slide.
Yeah, we primarily keep it like a little boutique firm,
Mhm.
because what we're trying to do is not to lose touch. And if you have a call, the very initial call, it's always going to be with me.
Yeah.
That's the last role that I would personally outsource. It doesn't take a lot of my time, but I actually enjoy it because I can provide value of collective knowledge from talking to all of you and industry experts and kind of regurgitate back to you and tell you that this is what worked and this is what didn't work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So you spoke a little bit about this DIY course. You also obviously use Source, and I don't know, is there anything particular you want to jump into and just really quick through here?
Maybe even kind of click on the next.
Oh yeah.
Here you go. I mean, right away you can see the offer itself and the discount that we're going to offer exclusively through this partnership and webinar. Again, if you're starting out, if you're not sure, if you've never managed VA, I actually would probably divert you to go to take a course and see how complex the sourcing process is and how sometimes actually it's unrealistic to expect that they will do everything for you and for like just $5 an hour, right? So like you will understand what it actually means to source. You can actually look at 3. We just started a pilot with an agency model. Typically, we don't do the agency model for various reasons. Again, we're not promising you we're going to train them or anything like that. The only thing that we're going to take over is actually paying the VA. That's it. So VA is going to submit the time to us. We're going to pay them. But what we're trying to do with the agency model is that we're not going to charge you the upfront fee. And then there is a markup on the rate. It's all upfront and you're aware of that. However, it's for you to just test the waters, right? That's your first employee, test the waters. Maybe hire them for 10 hours a week. The rates would start at $8 an hour. It will go up depending on the level of involvement and how skilled the employee you're trying to hire. But this is probably the better solution for you. And we do offer $500 off from the 12th month.
Yeah, I love number 2. I'll be biased. Agencies obviously is a newer thing, but I know you mentioned, folks, maybe try that DIY course. I would almost suggest against it, only because if you don't have the time to really entrust yourself with the quality of that experience, you're going to have a very haphazard experience, and you're going to do the same for everyone that you interview or potentially get the resume for, right? Like Thomas asked earlier, I don't have that much time. I want to hire this person. If you were to take this into your own hands when you already have limited time, it's going to take you even longer to find that hire. Whereas maybe down the road, once you've scaled, you do have more time. Maybe you want to take that on. I would challenge you and say, hey, if you have that much, if you're that much further, it might be better to outsource. But regardless, that's probably when I would say, prove it to yourself that it is as hard as it seems, because it is. And if you've tried it, you probably know there are hundreds of resumes that will come in. And to be able to go through and sift through all those intelligently, and then also go on interviews with people, whether it's a 10-minute process or 30 or an hour, it's going to take you a long time to find your unicorn. And Anna's got this honestly down to a T. So Rylan will talk a little bit more about how he's built his team as well. But I know he's been a faithful fan of OIT.
Yeah, and again, our main product is the sourcing that's in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
You are getting a tremendous discount. It's probably the first time we're offering such a huge discount. However, one thing I wanted to say is this is for probably if you've already been in the business for at least six to 12 months, you have good volume, especially if you're hiring an acquisition manager. Consider yourself 12 months expert. You have leads. Because what we also find is that our acquisition managers are also picky. Sometimes we brought in the great closer who just not go for the business after they've been interviewing actual business owner, because they're going for, they're going from like maybe solar experience, right? And they've generated $8,000 in bonuses alone per month, right? So sometimes we're asking for a lot, but we're not providing a lot, right? So when I talk to you as a business owner, I'm trying to align where you are in your business process with an expert that matches your sort of possibilities for them to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope today has kind of opened everyone here up to the idea of hiring. If you haven't, what is the leverage around hiring, and why is there leverage in outsourcing your tasks? That is a huge purpose of this webinar, is not just to outsource, but make your business more streamlined and efficient. And that happens through hiring. It also happens through Land Insights. And so that's why I really like this partnership. If you want more information on any of the tools here, I would suggest you book a demo if you haven't. If you want to reach out to Anna or take advantage of those offers, landinsights.outsourceyourtasks.com. Also, I want to add in next week, Rylan, on Tuesday that's going to be the day we actually move webinar number 2. So we're rescheduling that to be Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And if you can make it, we'd love to see you there. Rylan's going to be diving deep into his team, hiring, how to build that real assembly line, and also make it an efficient process where you can continue scaling even when you don't think you can. Rylan has probably been one of the masters of that. So I do think that there's a lot to consider when hiring, but again, OIT makes it very, very, and then also next week when we have Rylan on, he's going to walk you through really where's the leverage been, and how does that structure work once you've actually had them in your team? What does it look like? What are the follow-up cadences look like? What does the SOP look like? Those types of conversations for his team. And Rylan personally has 14 different hires, so I highly suggest you pop in for that webinar. That being the case, yeah, Anna, you got something to add?
One last thing I wanted to address Thomas's question, right? How does outsource your task confirm that the folks you source will truly be dedicated? And I guess like the main question is, are they typically proactive or much task oriented? As Ari pointed it out, that actually depends on your leadership style. If you're going to be micromanaging them, most of the time they are going to be task oriented. If you're going to let them run with it, they're going to be proactive. But I feel like it's a little bit of combination of both for the remote talent, right? Don't kind of like move away from not checking in with them, but also give them as much of freedom. And a lot of this also depends on the culture. If you hire anyone from Asia, they're going to be waiting because you're sort of like a priority in terms of like the chain of command. They're probably going to be waiting for you to tell them what to do. And then Latin America is more casual. They're more free. So you're probably going to have them drive with it more. In the United States, kind of same way. But again, you can put even somebody from Latin America or from the United States, micromanage the heck out of them. You're going to suck out all the proactiveness out of them. So it's a two-way street. Not to tell you that some folks are just generally looking for leadership and guidance, and other folks do take that initiative naturally. But you can go different ways, specifically with driving your leadership style and approaching it that way.
Yeah, and I'll add 2 things. One, that's why I like the low stress hire of a data analyst, because that's your first opportunity to kind of screw up a little bit, but at the same time grow as a leader, right? And if you're already a leader in your day job, or if you've had that experience, or maybe you have kids, taking that control, that authority figure type, position in the relationship, just making sure they understand what are the deliverables, and then doing what you said, Anna, having KPIs. If you're tracking their KPIs, well, they could have 20 clients. As long as they're hitting the KPIs that I've set and they're overachieving, I'd be impressed if they had that many clients, right? It's not going to happen. If you have those KPIs set out and you're constantly checking in at designated times to make sure we're on track and we're hitting them, they're going to be invested in the business, especially if their compensation allows them to continue winning, or if they feel comfortable with that, if they're an AM, which I think is what you're referring to. So.
Yeah, and unrealistic KPIs too, right? I would rather, again, if your close rate is around 10%, decrease it by 50% and make it their baseline. However, do create incentives that are going to be time-based so that they can actually supersede your close rate. So what I mean by that, let's say a 5% equates to 2 closed deals per month. We'll tell them for the 3rd deal per month, their bonus is so subsequently more than what they would have gotten for 2. And then the 4th, it's even more. But every month, it's resets, right? So that way you can inspire them to close as much as they actually strive for success, right? At this point, you pretty much play in their instrument how sort of ambitious that person is.
Yeah, it's a stumbling block towards higher desires, because every time you hit that next one, you're basically forcing them to want to work harder. And they're going to want to if they're that close to it. So love that insight, Anna. Thank you so much for joining us today. Everybody, thank you for hopping on. We hope you enjoyed this. Again, next week, Ryland's going to be hopping on, walking through his business and his A to Z. And we've got a lot more awesome things for him to walk through as well. So really excited to do that. Thanks again for your patience with Webinar Jam on Tuesday. If y'all have any questions, reach out to us. Here are our contact emails. We're also going to be sharing this replay after tomorrow, middle of the day, and we'll include the slide deck in there for your reference as well.
You're serious about flipping land for predictable profit, and you want to plug into the exact system our students are using to close their first deal or their next 10 deals, then tap the video right here. It's a free 15-minute strategy call where we're going to pull back the curtain and show you the exact LIA system that our students are using right now. We'll show you the entire process A to Z, on how you can start landing deals in the next 90 days or less. Slots tend to fill up fast. Grab your spot now. And I look forward to showing you the exact LIA land flipping playbook that I've been using for the last 6 years, and that nearly 500 other LIA members have used today. Click it, and I'll see you inside.